Hi everyone, welcome back to Plum Mashable. So today's going to be the first of a little series called Card Making Basics. So if you want to hear a little bit about how to start making cards, then just keep watching. Alright, so like I said at the start, this is going to be a series. Today's video is going to be the very high level sort of stuff. That's why I've got a multitude of things in front of me. The next video we'll dive into one of the categories I talk about, and then etc, etc, and we'll sort of start at the top and we'll work our way down and talk in real detail, or not too much detail because we'll be here forever, but as much detail as I can about sort of different categories, and then we'll sort of by the end of it hopefully you've got a really good understanding of how to make cards. Now I'm going to put a little asterisk, I'm not an expert, I'm not. I haven't been making cards forever. People have been making them a lot longer. This is just the stuff that I found as I sort of went through my journey, and I can kind of give tips and hints and tricks and advice on what you should invest in or shouldn't invest in. Don't do what I did, invest in everything, because that's not going to help you. But I have a lot, so it's kind of easy for me to be able to go, this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. But it's all my opinion, so just take that with a bit of a grain of salt. Alright, so the first category we're going to talk about is your foundations. And like I said, today's video is not going to go into too much depth. It's going to be pretty basic, but next time I do this, it probably will be in the next week or so, I can kind of go that step further and we can talk about something else. So I only have two kinds of cardstock in front of me that I use regularly. By the time that next video comes up, I will have a third. So this first one is what I call my basic cardstock. It's the cardstock that it doesn't pop up in every card, but it would pop up in 95% of them. And this is just my standard white cardstock. I'll go through all the details and everything in that next video, but it's just normal plain white cardstock. You can get it from basically anywhere, but it's good for bases, it's good for panels, it's good for, it's not so great for using for die cuts because it does bleed a lot with depending on what kind of medium you're using, and that's a whole other category, a whole other thing to talk about. But you will need a base of some kind, and I find that just 200 GSM cardstock, white cardstock, is a generally really good place to start. If you do want to go up a step and you want to use something else, ignore the fact that this is green, let's just pretend it's white, but the Kaisercraft cardstock is very good. I think it's 200 GSM, it'd be very close. It feels very similar to the white cardstock. Comes in a myriad of different colours, so if you want to do coloured card bases, you definitely can. If you want to have a different piece of coloured cardstock for every single colour that there is, you can do that too. You don't need to though. But I do find that having some coloured cardstock is very helpful, especially when you need to make a quick card. So the third one is then the Uniquely Creative cardstock. I haven't got it yet, it's on its way. It will be here by the time I do that next video and I can talk a little bit more about it, but I feel like that's going to be the next step up. So they're the first sort of base things. To make a card, you need a card base. Where do you go from there? Alright, so the next step, you need to be able to cut your card. So we need to cut it up. So when it comes to cutting, you have a few options. I'm ignoring for now, but I will go into that more detail. I'm ignoring using a craft knife and a ruler because to me it is completely and utterly inefficient. You will never get a straight line, even if you try, or you will, but it's just more trouble than it's worth. My advice is to invest in some tools, and along the way I'll tell you the tools that I have found. You need a big one and you need a little one. You need a big one. You need something that can cut 12 by 12. If you're going to buy 12 by 12 cardstock, you need something that can cut it. Therefore, you're going to need probably a 12 by 12 trimmer. I've tried 100 different trimmers. I'll tell you all about it. I like having a little one as well because the 12 by 12 takes a lot of room up on my desk. It's a pain to get in and out of my drawer. I like this one. It's a much easier way to do it. You will also need a pair of scissors because at some point or another you're going to have to cut something out. You can do all of this, you can card make with just a pair of scissors, but you need to find the right scissors. So again, we'll cover all of the basics of cutting in the next one. Oh, sorry, one more thing that I'm going to put into the cutting up. It's not, when we're talking card making basics, I feel like these are a basic, and these are something that I didn't know about till way after I started making cards properly. And it's basic stacking sort of dies. So whether it's your stitched rectangles in the standard, the slimline, whether it's just your infinity dies, things like this are the things that you should invest in early, because you will use them through your entire card making journey, whereas other things you're not going to use every time. But I would be surprised if I didn't use some kind of stitching die or shape cutting die in every card I make. So for me, that goes into cutting it up. You need things like that. That then goes into the whole other thing of die cutting machines and, you know, the continuing on. Nice to have, not essentials. You don't have to have dies, but if you're going to go down that route, this is where I need more time to talk to you all about this. So once we've cut everything up, then we need to start making our backgrounds. How do you make a background? Again, so many different ways you could do this. You can do it the most simple way there is, and you can get yourself a piece of pattern paper. This is just lawn fawn. I keep it in a bag so that I can keep all my scraps together. It does get stuck though. This is a wonderful idea by my friend Simone, who introduced me to these little sandwich bags. But a piece of pattern paper oftentimes will do 99% of the work for you. Then you can just move on to the next couple of categories I'm going to talk to you about. But if you don't want to use pattern paper, you can use regular cardstock, and you can use stencils and ink. You can use stencils and paint. You can use stencils and stencil paste. Or you can use washi tape, or you can use stamps. The background thing, again, it depends what kind of cards you want to make. If you want to make scenes, then the backgrounds could be made up of stencils or die cuts or things like that. So that's where I'll go into backgroundy kind of things all in that other video. But it depends what kind of cards you want to make. So we'll have those chats. I'm going to put a big little star thing here. If you've ever had any questions, if something you've wanted to ask or something that you think is weird, shoot me a message down below. I'll answer them all in each of the different videos. So if you ask me a question about backgrounds, I'll put like a Q&A at the end. I'll also put it up on Instagram, like as I'm filming them, like especially after this one's gone up, because you'll all know the categories. But then I can get some more questions, because I'd love to do that Q&A kind of thing. That would be a lot of fun. Alright, so you've got your background, you've got your base. Now you need sort of something to focus on. So you need some kind, what I call some kind of stamp. It doesn't have to be a stamp, it can be a die. Like die cuts work really well too. So I love die cuts. Especially love these ones from Denise from Luscious Labels, and they're just escaping me at the moment, but that's okay. But this is where all of your stamp and die sets are going to come in. You don't have to buy the dies. There are ways to get around that. I can talk to you about that later, but I prefer the dies. So then you can have stamp sets, they don't have to be lawn fawn. Stamp sets come into that, die cuts come into that, actual painted, like if you want to paint something, pattern paper, again, you can cut stuff like a, oh, see if I can find something really quickly, it's above my head. Oh, I think this is all pattern paper. These are stickers, but you can have the same sort of thing. You might have this as the center point or the focus point of your card. It just goes on forever. There's so many different kind of ways that you can do that. But then once you've got your, depending on which way you do it, you've got to have your way to add color to that focal point. So do you use markers? Do you use paint? Do you use pencils? Do you use inks? Inks can also be used on backgrounds. Again, depending on what kind of card making you like to do is going to impact what kind of colouring medium you prefer to use. Some people don't like to colour. Like if you watch Jennifer Maguire's videos, she says all the time, I don't like to colour. So she doesn't do as many sort of stamp focal point kind of ones, but she'll find other ways to use stamps if she wants to use them. Very, very clever. It just all depends on what kind of card making you'd like to do. So once you've got your background and you've got something to focus on, you need your sentiment. So from there, you can have so many different options. You have sentiment strips, which I love. So I've got my birthday ones here, my congratulations. I love my sentiment strips from Luscious Labels. I love my sentiment strips from Uniquely Creative. And Uniquely Creative do two different ways of their sentiment strips. They do the pre-printed ones, so these ones here that I've then just cut out with my essentials dies. But then they also have a stamped one that you can then cut out with the essentials dies. And so then there's ways that you can then use these. So do you want to just stamp them in regular ink? Do you want to use these with embossing powder? What kind of embossing powder? What other tools do you need? Do you want to use a slightly bigger? Do you not want to use a strip? Do you want to use a big word? Do you want to have it fussy cut? Do you want to just have just the stamp, just using the stamp that like this and just have it stamped on the background, just a really simple Happy Halloween or something like that? But you need to have the different kinds of different kinds of inks to make your sentiments work. So that's a whole other category. So the whole sentiment category is another one of the things we're going to talk about. The last sort of essential thing is you need a way to be able to stick it together. And this has, again, so many choices, and it all depends on what you like. Some people swear by liquid glue, some people swear by glue dots, some people swear by double-sided tape, but you'll also probably need foam tape at some point. Do you want to use wide foam tape? Do you want to use skinny foam tape? Do you want to use foam strips or squares or dots? So many different choices, and I'll talk all about all of the different choices. What are the pros, what are the cons of each of those as well. Last but not least, you have your nice to haves. This is going to be a bonus video. None of the things that pop up in a nice to have are going to be something that you need to start. You need nothing. But stuff like a scoreboard, stuff like a Misty, stuff like an extra die cut machine, because it's nice to have a small one and a big one. Nice to haves. Don't need them, but we'll have a talk about those as well. Nice to haves are also things like embellishments, Nuvo drops, etc, etc. Like I said, I would love your input into this. I'd love to know the questions you've always wanted to ask. What is it about card making that has you stumped? If you're not a card maker and you've always wanted to, what stops you jumping in and giving it a try? Please let me know. Please leave the comments. Like I said, I'll put comments, like ask a question things up on Instagram in the next couple of days, so follow along with my stories if you're interested in this one at all. I want to say a big thank you to Tian, who requested this sort of beginner's guide to making cards. I sat here and I tried to do this beginner's guide, and my notes were like 5 pages long, which is why I'm going to split this into a lot of videos. So this video is going to feel very, 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 I haven't given you any information. I've given you the very top layer. And now we're going to go digging, because it is a very large hole, card making. It doesn't have to be, but it can be a hole that we can fall into. So I'm going to try and walk you through everything and sort of tell you the things you need to have and the things that, okay, maybe you can start with 1 or 2 and you can build it up. Like I said at the start, these are the things that are my opinion. Other people will have different ways of making cards and will probably say something completely different. But for me, this is what I sort of think are the things that you have to have. And I hope that people agree with me, because otherwise I'm doing it wrong. So I hope you guys will tune in for those videos. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Leave your questions below. Find me on socials if you want to have a chat about anything. Don't forget to answer the questions. I hope you have an absolutely awesome rest of your day, a fabulous, fabulous weekend, and I'll catch you again in my next video. Sending lots of huggles. Bye!